News, we begin with a Middle East on edge. America tightening its stranglehold on Iran. So will that finally prompt the regime to reconsider its nuclear ambitions? We wait and see. Good morning. I'm Dana Perino. Bill Hemmer is off. Great to have you.
Good morning to you. Been great to be with you this week.
It was fun.
I'm Bill Malugin. This is America's Newsroom. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is just suffocating Iran's economy. The U.S. says they've now turned away more than 30 ships. The president says that blockade is actually more effective than bombing, costing Tehran $500 million every single day.
And the administration is keeping up the pressure despite extending the Iran ceasefire. The president giving an update on the situation in the Strait moments ago, as the White House says it is giving the diminished regime time to gather itself.
President Trump announced an extension of the ceasefire. He's maintaining and generously offering a bit of flexibility to a regime who has been completely tarnished because of Operation Epic Fury. There's obviously a lot of internal division. This is a battle between the pragmatists and the hardliners in Iran right now. Ultimately, the timeline will be dictated by the commander-in-chief and the president of the United States.
And Bryan Llenas is joining us live from Tel Aviv, Israel this morning. Hi, Bryan.
Bill, good morning. Well, the president just posted on Truth Social saying that the United States will triple its efforts in clearing the Strait of Hormuz of Iranian mines. This comes after the Pentagon told Congress that it'll take at least 6 months after the war has ended to clear the Strait of Hormuz of those mines. The president writing, quote, "I have ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat, small boats though they may be, that is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. There is to be no hesitation. Additionally, our minesweepers are clearing the strait right now." Meanwhile, economic pressure on Iran continues on this 10th day of the U.S. blockade of ships to and from Iranian ports. CENTCOM says at least 31 Iranian-linked ships have been turned away or blocked, including ships thousands of miles away in Asian waters. This is new video from the Department of War showing U.S. forces boarding the sanctioned oil tanker, the Majestic X, in the Indian Ocean overnight. The ship was illegally transporting oil from Iran as part of its shadow fleet. The U.S. boarded and seized 2 other Iranian ships over the last 4 days. President Trump telling Fox News yesterday there is, quote, "no rush and no time frame for when Iran needs to respond to U.S. demands to end the war," indicating that the U.S. is ready to keep crippling Iran's economy for as long as it takes to get Iran to negotiate.
We are choking their economy. We are strangling their main source of revenue. They can't pay their own people. They're losing $500 million every single day. Karg Island is completely full of oil because they can't transport it to and from. So the president, the cards are in his hands. The United States maintains control over the situation. He has all of the leverage.
Iran is responding by closing off international commerce in the Strait of Hormuz. IRGC fast attack boats yesterday fired on 3 international cargo ships, boarding and seizing 2 of them. The White House says these seizures do not violate the ceasefire, though, because they were not U.S. or Israeli ships. Iran says it won't negotiate with the U.S. until the U.S. lifts its blockade.
The ceasefire is an opportunity to prepare for reconstruction, or, in the words of our armed forces, an opportunity to reload. We have certainly made the best possible use of this opportunity.
Separately, the U.S. is hosting diplomatic talks between Israel and Lebanon in Washington, D.C. today in an effort to try to extend the ceasefire that is set to expire on Sunday. This is the first time in 43 years that both of those nations are having direct negotiations with one another. Bill?
All right, Bryan Llenas reporting live in Tel Aviv. Bryan, thank you.
And former Secretary of the Navy, retired Rear Admiral Kenneth Braithwaite. Thank you so much for being here. Sir, let me just put up this map here. This shows the military assets that we have in the region. President Trump, as Bryan just explained, said we're going to make sure that any of these small boats are just obliterated, and they're working on tripling the speed in which we can demine the strait. How do you see things this morning on the Thursday of this week?
Well, Dana, thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Literally what we see there is the greatest naval armada that's been positioned in any waters around the world in quite a long time. So the power of America from the sea to the shore is being demonstrated today. We do have the ability to seize the straits. We do have the ability, as the president indicated, to wipe out the fast boats. But again, that's going to take time, and it's going to take a concerted effort by all of our forces that are there. We have 3 carrier strike groups. We have 2 amphibious readiness groups, assorted other fleet assets that are there. Again, this is the greatest concentration of naval forces that we've seen in a long time.
The Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, was abruptly fired yesterday. There have been some reports that the White House wasn't thrilled with the speed of shipbuilding under his leadership. What does it say to you that the Secretary of the Navy was let go right in the middle of a war?
Yeah, well, you understand the Secretary of the Navy is responsibilities to man, equip, and train the Navy and the Marine Corps. So the actual command and control of the operation in the Middle East falls under Admiral Brad Cooper, the CENTCOM commander. However, this is indicative of a situation that has really complicated matters within the Pentagon. It's no secret that Secretary Phelan had fallen out of favor with Pentagon leadership, but also leadership over in the White House. Recently, I heard him doubling down. I was at a speech that he gave just 2 days ago about building a battleship. I've spent my life dedicated to the Navy as a naval officer first, and then having the honor to serve as the Secretary of the Navy. Battleships became obsolete on December 8th when the Japanese proved they no longer mattered in fleet operations. And so I think that frustration and canceling the recent frigate, I mean, we need distributed lethality over smaller platforms, not concentrated forces on large platforms. So again, I think all that frustration came to play. And the management within the Department of the Navy just had become very frayed. This was not an individual that listened to a lot of the admirals that were around him, people who have spent their life dedicated to the Navy and naval service. So this was the outcome that the president decided.
Actually, you're the best person to ask this. If we zoom out and we're talking about longer range preparedness, how important is this issue about having a great Navy? As we've seen, Britain hardly has anything left, so they can't come and help.
That's right.
And this is not just about the current conflict, but the ones to possibly come and our competition with China?
Dana, you're absolutely right. So at the turn of the last century, a gentleman by the name of Alfred Thayer Mahan, he wrote the definitive doctrine on naval capabilities when he published a book about that the greatest nations of the world are maritime nations. The Influence of Sea Power Upon History was the name of the book. And that led the United States under Teddy Roosevelt to build the greatest Navy that the world has ever seen. And to your point, how the Royal Navy has literally, kind of atrophied over the years. There's nothing more important than controlling the sea lanes. It's where all the commerce flows. Of course, we're seeing that in the Straits with over 20% of the world's oil supply being cut off. But navies are more important than most of us can recognize, not only for commerce, but navies prevent wars, Dana. Armies win wars, but navies prevent them. And so the effort towards shipbuilding today has to be an all-hands effort. The president is interested in having foreign shipyards build U.S. naval vessels. And, myself and other people are involved in this to try to get America back to a position where we're prepared at sea, to be able to power project, to be able to have the kind of influence that you're seeing play out now in the Gulf of Oman and across the Persian Gulf.
Thank you so much for being here. And as we look forward on, it was your pleasure. Hardly anyone ever says that. It took me by surprise. Thank you. Great to see you.
Have a great day.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.